Welcome to Satsang Conversations, where we journey across the world to the serene and sacred spaces of BAPS Mandirs. This podcast is your gateway to exploring profound spiritual lessons that echo through time yet remain incredibly relevant to our everyday lives. Each episode brings heartfelt discussions, wisdom, and insights that help us navigate the challenges of modern life with a deeper sense of peace, purpose, and connection. So whether you're seeking inspiration, solace, or a spark to light up your spiritual path, join us as we dive into conversations that uplift the soul and enrich the heart. This week, we travel to Gujarat to the BAPS Mandir in Sarangpur, where we'll be joining in conversation with Swami Aksharniketdas, Swami Gnannidhidas, Swami Keshavtilakdas, Pujya Jaydev Bhagat, and Shri Dhavalbhai.
Jai Swaminarayan, and welcome to Satsang Conversations. Today we are here in Sarangpur, which is the home of the Sant Talim Kendra, the training center for all BAPS sadhus. One major aspect of our training is the study of scriptures, and one medium we employ is goshthis, discussions on specific Vachanamruts. This medium is really effective as it allows us to gain new perspectives from our fellow students.
And while we're doing Vachanamrut Abhyas, one anubhav or experience that a lot of people have is that no matter where you are from around the world, all of the problems that you can see them answered in the Vachanamrut. For example, Jaydev Bhagat is from Philadelphia, Aksharniketdas Swami is from Dallas, Gnannidhidas Swami is from Florida, Dhavalbhai is from Columbus. And there's even people here in Sarangpur that have come from, the Gamadas in India. But when we come together and do these goshtis, we realize that the problems in society, they're common. And the answers are answered very explicitly by Maharaj in the Vachanamrut.
So today we're going to be discussing Vachanamrut Gadhada section 2, number 7, which is titled A Poor Man. And there's actually a prasang behind this Vachanamrut where a group of Santo went to go to Bhagaji Maharaj's Samagam in Bhadrod. And one morning after everyone finished their puja and Nityakram, Bhagaji Maharaj asked all the Santo to read their favorite Vachanamrut, meaning their Angnu Vachanamrut. And so there were Santo like Vijnana Swami who read Madhya 54. Then there were Parshads like Bechar Bhagat who read Pratham 54. And then there was Shastri Yagna Purushdasi, meaning Shastriji Maharaj, who read this Vachanamrut, Madhya 7. And so this is a very prasadi Vachanamrut because this used to be one of Shastri Maharaj's favorite Vachanamruts.
Another thing that's kind of interesting about this Vachanamrut is that it's a short Vachanamrut, but it's a very practical Vachanamrut. It's a Vachanamrut that you can read once and pretty much implement into your life almost immediately.
So I think without any further ado, let's start reading the Vachanamrut and we'll see where our conversations take us.
Swaminarayan Hare, Vachanamrut Gadhada section 2, number 7, A Poor Man. Swaminarayan Hare, on the night of Shravan Sudi 11, Samvat 1878, 9th August 1821, Swami Shri Sahajanandji Maharaj was sitting in front of the Mandir of Shri Vasudev Narayan in Dada Khacher's Darbar in Gadhada. He was dressed in entirely white clothes. At that time, an assembly of Paramhanses as well as devotees from various places had gathered before him. Thereupon Muktanand Swami asked Shriji Maharaj, a devotee of God resolves in his mind, I do not want to retain a single sabha which may hinder me in worshipping God, and yet such inappropriate sabhavs do remain. What is the reason for this?
I think based on Muktanand Swami's question, first let's just look at what is he implying as already being explicit. First, he says that a devotee of God resolves in mind, I don't want to retain a single swabhav which may hinder me in worshipping God. So there's already this preconceived notion that swabhavs are bad. They need to be eradicated. On first hearing that, my question is, in today's day and age, there's this narrative that swabhavs are the things that you should embrace because they're what makes you you, right? They're your personality traits. Like I'm a perfectionist, and so I tend to get angry when things don't get my way. That might happen, right? But that's just how I am. So when Muktanand Swami says that swabhavs need to be eradicated, what's the reasoning behind that? Why does he take that route?
Actually, whatever you ask, it is already in the Vachanamrut. Because Muktanand Swami, if you read further, he has said such inappropriate swabhavs do remain. So there are two kinds of swabhav. One is appropriate and other one is inappropriate. And here, if we read this Vachanamrut and this question and we break it down, it says Muktanand Swami goes ke a devotee and he is doing a devotee and he is doing bhajan of Bhagwan. So the primary goal of the devotee is to do Bhagwan's bhajan, devotion of Bhagwan. So when a devotee knows that this is my primary goal, he will identify what swabhav are appropriate for me and what swabhavs are inappropriate for me. So I think Muktanand Swami, Muktanand Swami's question itself has so much depth, so much layers to it.
And one interesting thing in this question itself that Muktanand Swami has realized is that swabhavs are a core problem. You mentioned he has a goal that he wants to do Bhagwan's bhajan, but he's realized here, okay, I don't want to retain a single swabhav which may hinder me in worshipping God. And I think this is a core siddhant in satsang. For example, Maharaj in Gadhada section 3, number 21, he very explicitly says that as long as you have ego, jealousy, anger, to koi jeev pidya vina reh nahi, which means that he's going to experience dukh and pain no matter what. And this goes back to an interesting concept that Pujya Dharmasetu Swami, one of our senior santo here in Sarangpur, said in a katha a couple of weeks ago. He gave an example from a medical phrase from the time of Hippocrates. What he said is that treat the disease, not the symptom. Treat the disease, not the symptom. A lot of times what we do is, for example, we'll go after the symptom. For example, let's say someone's getting ahead in life, right? That was at the same level as us, and they're going ahead. Then we feel that, okay, how can I, bring them back down? Or we spend all our time focusing on that person. But we don't realize that the core reason why we're doing all of that is because we have jealousy that's within us. Or someone might, might say a couple words at us that hurts our ego. And then in our mind, that thing just plays over and over again. And we get dukhi because of that playing in our mind. We multiply that over and over again. But the core problem, the disease, is that, okay, I have an ego and it's been hurt, right? So a lot of the times where we experience pain, dukh, these are things that we can attribute to some swabhav that's causing us to not feel happy in that moment. And I think one interesting thing is that difficult situations do exist, right? We accept that in satsang. But the thing is, the way you react to it, the way you react to that scenario, that is something that's in our control. And that is what adhyatmikta or spirituality or satsang, that's what that gives us.
And these reactions are based on your swabhav. No matter how much you have, no matter how much you possess, but if you have swabhav, you cannot be happy. Like we have seen in history, we have read in our scriptures, Duryodhan, Ravana, they were the kings. Duryodhan was the strongest king. He had a kingdom in Hastinapur, which is the strongest and biggest kingdom of India. But still, he was not happy because of his jealousy towards Pandavas. He thought the problem is Pandav, but it was only symptom. The problem was his jealousy, which was the disease within him. So whenever Pandavas get any kind of progress, like he was unhappy. When Pandav got Indraprasth and Yudhishthir started Yagna, and he was donating to 1,000 Brahmins every single day, and he was giving gold coin, and Duryodhan cannot see that. What he did, he was losing the weight just because Pandavas were getting famous, they were getting praise from the Brahmin. When he visited Indraprasth, after coming back from Indraprasth, he told Karna, the wealth of Pandavas are eating me alive. I cannot see that. You guys have to do something about it. I cannot sleep. I cannot even taste the food. Like this is the extreme. Probably we do not have this kind of jealousy in our life, but we have some kind of Duryodhan Vritti.
I think what you mentioned here is that it was really interesting that Duryodhan Vritti is still within us. There's a little bit of Duryodhan within us, which is really interesting because there's a lot of scenarios where we don't even realize what's going on. For example, imagine someone that wants to get an A in a class and he gets a 70%, a C or C minus. And if the other friends in his friend circle also get a C or lower, then it'll hurt a little bit because he didn't get the expectation, but it won't hurt as much. But imagine if he gets that C and all of his other friends around him, they get an A, or they get into the dream college they wanted to go to and he doesn't get that, or they get job offers that he wants and he's not able to get it. That dukh is multiplied and it hurts even more. And the reason why is because of that comparison vritti that is still there.
And jealousy is even beyond that. Sometimes what we try to do, like if our friend or someone, if he gets progress, what we are waiting for his failure, and sometimes we even try
to bring them back.
Bring them back.
Yeah.
I think that, so what you mentioned was an example from our Shastras, but we're kind of establishing here that you can't hang on to these swabhavs and still be happy, right? It's like an illusion that, it's okay, I can still maintain these things about me, yet still maintain happiness. Like, for example, historically, if you look at Napoleon, he's one of the greatest emperors of all time. He declared himself emperor. He conquered almost half of Europe, right? But eventually, when he was exiled on the island of St. Helena, a visitor comes to him and wants to know, how he was able to achieve the impossible. He had all of the riches in the world at one point, right? How did you get to that point? And asks him about that backstory. And he says that he hasn't had 6 days of happiness in his life, not even 6 days. And so when you go into that, you wonder, how does this person who has all the things that you would expect to give happiness in this world not have 6 days of happiness? It was because of his swabhavs. He says himself that his ambition was so strong that he was always fearful that someone might take what he has conquered away from him, or he might lose the position which he has acquired.
That's why Shriji Maharaj has mentioned in Vachanamrut Gadhada Antya 38 that if you have this one of the 6 સ્વભાવ, તમે ક્યારેય તમે સુખી નહીં થાવ, જીવતા પણ નહીં અને મર્યા પછી પણ નહીં. You will not be happy either you are alive or even after your death. So this is the core principle that Bhagwan Swaminarayan has given us.
I think one way to think about this is if we flip the script a little bit. If we, when we get to a point where we're above swabhavs, how things are, we were able to remain steady. And so when we look at like the life of Bhagwan Ram, before his coronation, when it was announced that he was going to be king, there was, jubilee, fanfare. He was extremely happy. He had recently married Sita ji, and so he was, living a very contentful life. And the night before his coronation, Kaikai decides to tell Dashrath that I want to use my 2 boons. 1, send Ram to the forest for 14 years, and 2, that Bharat, my son, should become the king. And Dashrath has no choice but to accept these 2 boons, or to give these 2 boons. And so they call Ram to let him know. And when Ram is summoned to Dashrath and Kaikai's chamber, Ram in that position is still in that mood that I'm about to become king. And so he tells Sita ji that, they're calling me to discuss my coronation. And so he goes to the room, and in the room he sees his father extremely upset. And he sees Kaikai, and Kaikai tells him that Dashrath has decided that you have to go to the forest for 14 years and Bharat will become the king. And in that moment, the way it's described in the Ramayana, you can see that Ram Bhagwan's face remained the same, but internally he was also the same. The happiness that he was experiencing when he thought he was going to be king was the same happiness that he was experiencing despite knowing that he's going to be in the forest. And even once he was in the forest, he still was that content. And even if we look at Mansai Maharaj, when Mansai Maharaj was a yuak and traveling with Yogiji Maharaj, he would often serve the Hari Bhaktos that were there. And so one day for breakfast, he was serving Hari Bhaktos cha. And so he started at the front of the pangat and he was piercing cha. He was serving cha to the people as he was going, and his vessel ran out. And so he went to refill his vessel. And instead of starting from where he left off, he started from the back of the line and was working his way forward. And in the middle, there was a Hari Bhakt who was really eager for his cha. And because Vinubhai started from the back of the line, this upset him. And so he got up, he took the cha vessel and poured it straight on Vinubhai's feet. And in this moment, like anybody else would get upset, like, I didn't do anything to you, why are you getting upset at me? But Vinubhai didn't say a word. The content, the happiness that he was feeling before is the same happiness he was feeling then. He quickly washed his feet, cleaned up his clothes, and went back to serving. And so we see that, to stay steady in good times and bad times is through the lack of swabhavs.
And we have, this is not only one prasang. We have seen so many prasang in Pramukh Swami Maharaj's life, Mahant Swami Maharaj's life. And on the flip side, we talked about Duryodhan, we talked about Napoleon, that they had so much, but they cannot enjoy what they had because of this swabhav. But I think when we come back to the Vachanamrut, it is even bigger problem if you have swabhav when you are walking on the spiritual path. So if we have swabhav, and if the person has wealth, if he has good family, if he has good friend, but he cannot enjoy those company, he cannot fully enjoy what he possesses. But more importantly, even though the person has got Satpurus, he got the Satsang, but because of the swabhav, he cannot get the Satsang no sukh. And that's the even bigger problem. Like we have seen these examples in our satsang, like Faiba of Machya, right?
And I think Faiba's situation, like if you think about it, she was a staunch devotee of Maharaj. And Maharaj went to Macha 32 times because of her bhakti. But once we heard the famous story of once her and her daughter-in-law got in a dispute. And because of the dispute, she kicked her daughter-in-law out of the house. So when Maharaj was going to Macha one day, he sees the daughter-in-law and she tells Maharaj that this is what the situation has happened and I'm ready to apologize to Faiba as well as I will do anything she says. So then Maharaj was confident that Faiba is my devotee. So if I go tell her, she will listen to me. And that's what Maharaj does. Maharaj goes and tells Faiba. But this time when Maharaj tells Faiba that she should resolve her problems with her daughter-in-law, Faiba goes like, Maharaj, you won't understand a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law situation, so just stay out of it. So then Maharaj tries to convince her again. But there was something within Faiba that was allowing her not to listen to Maharaj's Agna. And that was her stubbornness. The swabhav until now, she didn't realize because she was attaining the sukh of satsang, she was attaining Maharaj's love, she was serving Maharaj with love. But when it came to following Maharaj's Agna, what was happening is her stubbornness, her ego was keeping her away from making Maharaj Raji.
So exactly, this is the manan I got from Katha, that the stubbornness or ego was the problem that Faiba had. That was the disease. What were the symptoms? She didn't get along with her daughter-in-law. But it didn't end there. The problem was not limited to her relationship with her daughter-in-law. It extrapolated to Maharaj. So because of her stubbornness, not only her daughter-in-law left the home, because of her swabhav of stubbornness, even Maharaj and 500 Paramhans left her home without eating during the lunch time. So this is like bigger loss.
And she didn't even feel bad about it because her stubbornness was such at a point where even when Maharaj was leaving, and Maharaj has visited her this many times, but this time when Maharaj is leaving, she's alright. Maharaj, you know everything. You can continue.
So the problem is bigger here, right? If someone is doing the business and if you lose one customer at dollar store, that's a smaller problem. But if you lose a customer at diamond shop, it's a bigger problem. But if you lose a contract with the Apple or Microsoft, that's a big loss. So losing anything in this world is similar to losing dollar store or losing a customer at diamond shop. But when you lose satsang, when you lose satpurus, when you lose faith, it is like losing the contract of a Microsoft or Apple.
So swabhavs are keeping you from worshiping God. Not only are they keeping you in misery in this world, not allowing you to live happily, have good relationships, etc., but also not experience that sukh associated with satsang. I think we established that through all the examples that everyone shared. But my thing is, okay, let's think about it practically. How realistic is it that you're able to eradicate all these swabhavs?
That's a good question, right? Because if you look at all of it, we just talked about, throughout human history, this is an innate problem, right? Swabhavs is innate in people. And you look at through history, you look at it in your own lives. Your question is basically that, is it even realistic to get rid of swabhavs?
Yeah, like we gave so many examples of people who weren't able to do so. So is this something that we just accept?
So if you look at it, yeah, there are people that have swabhavs and it's causes them dukh. But there are plenty of people that have been able to overcome swabhavs. And the ideal example is Sadguru Santos, right? They themselves say that when we first came in, Yogiji Maharaj just sung in his company, we had whatever swabhavs we had. But now if you look at their lives, anybody that does the darshan of them can tell that they're experiencing sukh on a different level. They're experiencing satsang on a different level. And it's because they've overcome these swabhavs. And so if you need any sort of practical look, you can just look at them and you'll see it.
I think this is actually one really important thing about satsang, which is that, like we read about the principles of satsang, right? Or you read, like from the Gitas or the Upanishads, you read about what satsang should be about. But in satsang here, it's actually lived. Like you have actual concrete data points that you can look at and see that, okay, people are living this. And then that gives you confidence that, okay, in this path, it's a tried and tested path. I think that's really something really powerful about satsang.
And one additional thing, you both had mentioned how it's our innate nature to have swabhavs. But if we look at our tattva gnan, our true self, what our innate self is actually the Atma. And the Atma doesn't have any swabhavs. So the swabhavs lie in our body, our three bodies, the sthula, sukshma, karan bodies. And so we don't realize it, but our true selves doesn't have swabhavs. And so what we're trying to do in satsang, and the whole point of spirituality, is to get to that point where we're no longer controlled by our bodies. And another thing that's important is, that you had mentioned, that is it practical? Muktanand Sai himself is kind of proving that it is practical. He doesn't ask Maharaj, is it possible to get rid of swabhavs to attain sukh? He doesn't ask Maharaj, how can I attain this ability to get rid of swabhavs? Those two things he's already accepted. And this is somebody with way more spiritual experience than any of us. But what he does ask Maharaj is, I'm trying to attain it and I can't attain it, so what's holding me back?
So to answer Muktanand Swami's question, Shriji Maharaj replied, if a person has deficiency of Vairagya, then even if he has the Shraddha to eradicate his swabhavs, still they will not be eradicated. For example, a poor man may wish for lots of sumptuous food and lavish clothes, but how can he acquire them? Similarly, one who lacks Vairagya may wish in his heart to acquire the virtues of a sadhu, but it is very difficult for him to do so. So in this answer, Shriji Maharaj mentions Vairagya. So first, I think we should define what Vairagya means. And Maharaj actually defines it in Vachanamrut Pratham 44, where Maharaj says that Vairagya is detaching one's body, having detachment from one's body and the Brahman, meaning the world, and attaching oneself to Bhagwan. And Mahant Swami Maharaj in Satsang Diksha Shlok 120 also mentions Parasmad Brahmano Nasmin Naksharat Brahmanastata Prityo Bhavo Hi Vairagyam Ange Bhakti Sahayakam. Meaning, he's saying that a person should not have love towards anyone or anything other than Bhagwan.
And this is something that you think in satsang, like when you think of Vairagya, what do you think of? You think of, someone sitting in the Himalayas and doing top and, being detached from society and being detached from everything else. But in satsang, the definition of Vairagya is a little bit different. It's also tied to Bhagwan Usuk. And I think that's something that exactly what Maharaj is saying right here in this drashtant. What Maharaj is saying is that imagine there's a poor man, and a poor man desires to have, enjoy a luxurious lifestyle. He wants to have good food, he wants to enjoy luxury. And the problem is that as long as he's in poverty, he won't be able to enjoy that luxurious lifestyle, right? That's like a very one-to-one type of thing. But then Maharaj explains that when you get out, if you can get out of poverty somehow, then you can enjoy that luxury that you desire. And what Maharaj is saying is that as long as you're attached to the world, you'll never be able to, eradicate your swabhavs and connect to Bhagwan. And if you can remove your attachment, if you can become detached from the world, aka Vairagya, then you'll be able to, get rid of your swabhavs and focus on Bhagwan. And this is a very interesting way that Maharaj gives this example, but it's a very perfect, I think, example for this answer.
So what Maharaj is saying is just having the desire or a strong desire is not enough. You also have to have the means, and the means is Vairagya.
Exactly.
And I think one point worth clarifying is here Maharaj says that one who lacks Vairagya may wish in his heart to acquire the virtues of a sadhu, but it would be very difficult for him. And so here when Maharaj says sadhu, it contradicts what Muktanand Sai had asked. Muktanand Sai asked about a Bhagwan's bhakt, and Maharaj is talking about a sadhu. And so what Maharaj means by sadhu is not somebody that's wearing orange clothes. He's not just talking to the santos and leaving the rest of the satsang samaj out. What Maharaj means by sadhu is somebody who's on the path of sadhana, someone who's doing sadhana, someone who's working towards attaining Bhagwan's sukh and working towards them. So it's somebody that has, who's trying to attach himself to Bhagwan. And those virtues are things like humility, dasvav, things that are universal. Right? Maharaj in Pratham 44, which the Vachanamrut you had mentioned before, talks about someone who is a sadhu. He gives those qualities. Someone who is Brahmrup, someone who's attached from the world, someone who has no I-ness and minus in their life. And these are all universal things. So when Maharaj is talking, he's not just talking about sadhus like tyagis. He's talking about the entire satsang samaj. Anybody working towards attaining Bhagwan Usuk.
And this is like a gold level answer, right? What Maharaj basically is saying, like as an example, is that let's say you want to get rid of anger, right? You get angry because someone, you have a desire for something, you have an ichha for something, and it doesn't happen. Now, what Maharaj is saying is that now imagine if you didn't have an ichha in the first place. Why would you get angry? There's no reason to get angry, which means that you can then focus fully on Bhagwan. So what Maharaj is giving here is like a gold medal, like all-star, first team first answer of what an ideal person should be like if they want to enjoy Bhagwan Usuk. But the interesting thing now is that Muktanand Swami will try to bring the conversation back down to our level. From that high post, he'll try to come down to what the rest of us can maybe do to get to this point.
Muktanand Swami then asks, if a person does not possess Vairagya, what means should he adopt to eradicate those vicious natures?
It's interesting that Muktanand Swami is asking what happens if a person does not possess Vairagya, because Muktanand Swami himself is known as the embodiment of Vairagya. If we look at his life, we know that he left home from a very young age in pursuit of this Vairagya, trying to detach himself from the world and attach himself to Bhagwan. And he went to such lengths to find where that happiness, where he can find that happiness. So why would Muktanand Swami be asking what happens if a person doesn't possess Vairagya? Like, isn't Muktanand Swami someone who does possess Vairagya?
And just to add on what you say about Muktanand Swami's Vairagya, he has gone through a lot of tests that Bhagwan Swaminarayan has taken. Maharaj has given like 114 different prakarana to this Paramhanso, and each of the Paramhanso, including Muktanand Swami, they passed those 114 prakarans, and some of these prakarans were really tough.
One prakarana that kind of like blew my mind when I read it in the Sarnivata Granth is that one time Maharaj gives Agna that whatever food you beg for food, you get food. Then what do these Paramahansa have to do? They have to put it in a cloth. They have to dip it in water as many times as it takes to take the ras, the taste, the flavor out of the food. Then you take the ball of food, you offer it to a dog. And if the dog doesn't sniff and try to eat the food, only then should you eat the food.
How much Vairagya you should have to be able to eat that kind of food every single day, twice a day. And we don't know, we don't have anywhere written like how long this prakarana lasted, but like for how many months they ate this food. This is
Muktanand Swami, right? This is the person who already has this level of Vairagya who's asking this question.
So Muktanand Swami is at this level. And why is he asking this question? And so he was also known as the mother of Satsang. And so that means at this level of Vairagya, he's coming down, which is also another form of Vairagya. And there's actually a prasang where Maharaj used to give Santos niyams that they should only eat once a day. And one time in Muktanand Swami's Mandir, the Santo were eating rotla at an off time. And Muktanand Swami walks into the room and he sees the Santo eating, and the Santo see Muktanand Swami and the rotlas fall out of their hand. Because Muktanand Swami was very disciplined when it came to Maharaj's niyams. So now Muktanand Swami saw that the Santo became frightened by seeing that they're eating at an off time. So then Muktanand Swami instead comes down to their level, and Muktanand Swami tells the Santo that I'm also hungry. Do you have rotla that I can eat? So then the environment became very light. The Santo became happy and they gave Muktanand Swami rotla to eat, and Muktanand Swami ate with them.
And there's also another prasang that's very similar to this, which is when Gunatitanand Swami first got Diksha and he became a sadhu, he was placed in Muktanand Swami's mandal. And one time Gunatitanand Swami sees that Muktanand Swami is lying down on the bare ground.
And the ground had rocks.
Rocks and like, grass or whatever. And Gunatitanand Swami sees that, and he tries to do the same thing. And then Muktanand Swami at that time, he tells him that, look, you're a new sadhu, right? It may take you time to get to this point. Maybe you sleep on a bed at the beginning, and then dire dire you can get to this. And Gunatitanand Swami is obviously Akshar Brahm, so he's ready to follow Maharaj's Agna to the letter. So he sleeps on the ground immediately. But this just gives you a window into the mind of Muktanand Swami. This is someone who has this level of Vairagya, Sadhuta, all these guns, but yet he's able to come down to the level of someone who's still starting out in sadhana, still starting out in the spiritual path. So it seems like, right, that Muktanand Swami is just maybe asking this question so that for the rest of us, because he does this also in Gadhada section 2, number 62. In that, Vachanamrut Maharaj gives like a super gold level answer for Atmanishta. He defines Atmanishta, he defines Pativrtapanu, he defines Dasbhav, and he gives like a very high standard. And then at the end, Muktanand Swami says, "Ke Maharaj, ato satsang ma lakshavadi manusya che," meaning that there's hundreds of thousands of people in satsang, and not everyone can act at this level. So what can the average person do? And maybe that's what Muktanand Swami is kind of doing with this question.
I think like on a personal level, when I was first reading this Vachanamrut, I felt the same way. I read the question, I read Maharaj's answer, and it was like, I personally don't have that level of Vairagya that the Paramahansa says, those prakarans and everything like that. And throughout the Vachanamrut, there's many times that I feel that Muktanand Swami is like a champion for
the common man.
The common man,
yeah.
right? He asks the simplest way to do something. He asks, we can't do this, what can we do? And so you can see that, Muktanand Swami is constantly, he's at a very high level, but he's there for us, the common folk, just to make sure that we're also able to get to that kind of level.
Yeah, I can see why Muktanand Swami would ask that question for others. But just knowing Muktanand Swami's personality, I feel like he might be asking this question for himself in the sense that he has this ability to introspect, and he's always trying to check himself to see what more can I do to make Maharaj Raji, right? What more can I do to have a higher level of Vairagya? And so when Maharaj says that the answer to this is having Vairagya, instead of his mind saying, oh, well, this is great, I got this in the bag, like this is my ball game. Instead, he thinks, oh, I still have swabhavs which affect me, so I must not have Vairagya. So he has that ability to introspect and then, change that perspective that he has to see what does Maharaj want me to do and what more can I do to achieve that.
The level of introspection that Muktanand Sai has comes out in the prasang of him doing Mara. So Maharaj one day in Seva asked some Hari Bhaktos how many Maras you do, and they said whatever 10, 15, 20, 100 Maras, and Maharaj asked Muktanand Swami, and Muktanand Sai says just one. And so it's jarring, right? A Hari Bhakt is doing 100 Maras, Muktanand Sai just is able to do one in a day. But Maharaj wanted to bring this point out. So Maharaj asked Muktanand Sai, how do you do a Mara? And he says that throughout all 108 beads, if for a single moment my mind detaches from your murti, I don't count that Mara. So this is the level that he's at. But that means there are times where his mind might detach. And so he considers that as his ayogya swabhav. And that's what he's trying to get rid of by, asking Maharaj again and again about this. And another thing in Muktanand Sai's question is the vivek in which he asks, right? We talked about how he has Vairagya. And he doesn't tell Maharaj that, I have Vairagya, your upaya isn't working. But, he takes it on himself. The problem has to be with me. He doesn't cross Maharaj. And there's another point, that I had just thought of that, whenever we talked about his introspection, the fact that he's able to take it on himself is actually a really big quality. Many times when we're sitting in katha and, the Vakta Sant or, whoever's presenting brings up a point like this, our minds go to that guy over there. Like that guy needs to wake up and listen to what the Sant is saying, because this is about him. We don't take it on ourselves that I have this problem, I need to work on it. So that's, a really big point that Muktanand Sai shows through this question.
Okay, so let's kind of recap where we're at in this Vachanamrut right now. Muktanand Swami first started out by talking about the fact that we have swabhavs that hinder us from enjoying the sukh of satsang. He asked Maharaj, how do you get rid of those swabhavs? Maharaj gave like a gold medal, all team pro answer, which means he said that you need to have vairagya, detach yourself from the world to do all of this. And then Muktanand Swami now is asking a question to bring it back down to our level, which is that, okay, Swami, okay, Maharaj, if you don't have that vairagya, is there another way to achieve that? So now let's see what answer Maharaj gives.
Shriji Maharaj replied, if a person lacks Vairagya but intensely serves a great Sant and obediently perseveres his observances of injunctions of God, then God will look upon him with the eye of compassion and feel, this poor fellow lacks Vairagya, and lust, anger, etc. are harassing him very much. So now, may all those vicious natures be eradicated. As a result, they will be eradicated immediately.
It's interesting in this that Maharaj gives an answer that's focusing on intensely serving. Right? In the Gujarati Vachanamrut, it says Atishay Seva. Now, I mean, when I first read it, I was confused about what Atishay Seva is compared to regular Seva. But when you look at Yogiji Maharaj's Nirupans of this Vachanamrut, he gives definitions. And he gives two predominant definitions, and one of them is Had Uprant Seva, which means Seva past your means. And પોતાથી ના બને એવું કરે તે અતિશય સેવા. So what you think you physically cannot do, but you're able to do it, that's atishay seva. So kind of it becomes, in common terminology, stepping out of your comfort zone, being able to do something that you didn't think you were able to do. And when you're in that kind of position and you do seva, that is what Maharaj defines as atishay seva. And luckily all of us were in Robbinsville for seva for about 2 years. And that task itself was impossible. And yet we did it. And, you can see that that's basically a type of Atishay Seva.
When we look at Robbinsville, when someone from the outside world comes to Robbinsville and sees Akshardham, what they see is 12,500 volunteers who came together and basically did the impossible to make their Guru Raji. Right? They see that from the outside. They see that in 2 years all this happened. But the magic of Akshardham was not just the fact that the task was completed. It's when you actually zoom into each individual volunteer that was there. because you see the way that they did seva, the reason why they did seva, the bhavana behind them doing seva, and all of that, and then after that, what they got out of doing seva. And all of that, sort of gives a very clear picture to someone in today's day and age of what this Atishay Seva is about.
Yeah, like you talked about zooming into each one of those 12,500 volunteers. When you look at these volunteers, they come from different backgrounds, right? You have small business owners, you have people that are working in all parts of industry, working professionals, and you also have students. For example, there was a student on my team who talks about their experience with Site Seva and how helping in the Akshadam project actually made a difference in what they were like as a student and changed their academic trajectory as well. Now, this individual came to Site Seva, but at the same time was doing coursework online to continue towards working on his degree. And they talk about what they used to be like before Site Seva. They were procrastinating and making it such that, they would be working on assignments last minute and, doing everything, really working right up to the hour. But Site Seva put him in such an environment where he was forced to think about every minute now, right? And because of that, he was planning his time so that assignments were done 2 weeks before they were due, because he had to balance both seva and his academic workload. And so you can see here that people are putting away these swabhavs like laziness and procrastination. And they even say, like, he even said that my old habits aren't going to cut it. So what that means is he had some swabhav which continued with him throughout his academic career up until this point, where all of a sudden doing Akshardham Seva was changing the way he approached his schoolwork. The same passion that he brought to the Seva that he was doing, he took back and was also being carried over into the way that he was approaching his academic career.
There was a similar situation. There was a senior manager at a multinational pharmaceutical company that had come to Ravensburg for Seva. And he was assigned to the ground teams, where he would be rigging stones, sending up stones, and washing stones. But in his professional field, this is somebody that thousands of people reported to or answered to, and his way is the way to go. And he would be the guy giving the commands that we're going to go this way, we're going to do this. And here in sight, whoever was upstairs, placing stones, whatever they said, he would have to do. And that could be anybody. That could be a 20-year-old college kid telling this multinational, company manager, hey, I need this stone, not that stone. Oh, can you make sure that the knot is tied properly? All these like little things. And he, was happy to do it, right? In normal cases, when you're at a, a managerial position, when people tell you to do something, you are hesitant to do it. It like hurts to do it because you're the guy that should be giving commands. And here he's being commanded, but he was able to do it because, as we mentioned, that ego is being instantly diminished the moment you start doing seva.
Also, we have like different kind of backgrounds in a different way. We had some some volunteers who came there as a visitor and they did some little bit of seva. We had some recently migrated people from the India. We had some people who were on H1 visa. We had young kishores who were born and raised in India. Still, they worked together. Also, there was a huge age range. We had kishores of 18, 19, 20-year-old who are going to college. We have recently graduated yuvaks. We have yuvaks who just recently get married. I had a yuvak who did seva with me, whose wife was pregnant. We have yuvaks who had very young kids. We have middle-aged yuvak who had their teenagers at home, and we have old uncles in 60s and 70s who had grandkids at their home. But in Robbinsville, all of them worked together. They didn't feel that, oh, it is hard for me to work out with a person who is 30 years older than me, or he is from different background. He has different thought process because he has been raised in different country. Like all of them felt as a family. They were working together and they didn't even try. Normally, when we are at the workplace or in the family, it is hard to get along with someone who is like 20, 30 years older than you, or a manager if he is like 30, 40 years senior. It is really hard for us to get along to the 70-year-old kaka. So this happened because all of them has put some kind of ego away without knowing,
without recognizing it.
yeah, without recognizing at all. And what happened, that they understood each other.
Yeah.
This is the sadhutana gun that Maharaj talked about in Vachanamrut, that you get sadhutana gun if you do this atishay seva. They To understand other person, you have to put your own thoughts aside, and this exactly happened in Robbinsville, and they felt we are part of the family.
And I think one of the main reasons for this was because of the messages that Mahant Maharaj was implanting in their life. Like, for example, one of the sabhas that they had with Mahant Maharaj through a video call, they gave Mahant Maharaj a blank stone and they asked Mahant Maharaj to write a message on there. And what does Mahant Maharaj write? Seva with Samp. Now, when Bapa wrote this, immediately everyone was excited. You could see a positive vibe in the hall. And when everyone is going to do seva, you can see that they're excited. So now in the back of their mind, they know that I have to do seva with Samp.
And we have seen these prasangs where there was so much within our Hari Bhakto. I witnessed a prasang where one of the Kishore, his name was Manush Bhai, and he lost his phone. And we were looking for his phone, and most of us knew this phone must be crushed under the telehandler, under the lull, because it felt on the ground. So we had one volunteer, his name was Dharam Bhai, he found out, and he immediately ordered the phone. It was latest iPhone he ordered for Manush. He went to the store, he picked up, and he gave this phone to Manush Bhai within a couple of hours. So when I asked him, like, why did you do that? He told me that what would I do if my brother, if my wife, if she lost the phone? I would buy new phone. Manush is like my brother, and he's teenager, and we know the teenager likes to have their phone. They cannot live without their phone for probably whole day. So he bought the phone. So there was a sense of family environment in Robbinsville. We have read in our scriptures that Vasudev Kutumbakam, but it came automatically at the lower level. But all of the Hari Bhakto, all of the volunteers in Robbinsville felt that we are part of one big family. And this is really hard to understand every single person, all 400, 500,000 people as a part of their family. And that's why everyone was enjoying Seva, and they had this relationship even outside this Seva.
You know, in Humankind by Rutger Bergman, he talks about how it's an innate human trait to have tribalism, mine versus yours, me versus you. And that's the reason that those that you consider your own, you'll go to extreme lengths for them. Soldiers in World War II, when they were fighting, they said they were fighting for their fellow soldiers. They were willing to take a bullet for their fellow soldiers. But that same person, if you asked them to take a bullet for somebody on the other side, they wouldn't. So that acceptance of people, and whether that's your family, whether that's your community, that minus that these are my people, that's what came out. But here, they weren't that person's family, but yet they thought they were my family. They came from different communities, and yet they felt this is my community. And so that's something really profound that, to get above this basic level of tribalism, that, mine and yours, to transcend that is something that is basically transcending human nature.
And the thing that you mentioned is actually really interesting, because how did this all happen? Well, it's because Mahant Maharaj just said one line, okay, we want to do seva with Samp. And that's exactly what Maharaj just said in this Vachanamrut, which is that Mota Purush or the Satpurush, this Krupa Drashti. And just one line can cause, these thousands of volunteers that from the inside, they feel like, okay, we're all one. Or I'm doing Bhagwan's darshan in you and we're all one family. That's just one line creating such a profound impact. I think that's something very special about the way that the Mota Purush works, right? His Krupa Drashti is so powerful.
And it was felt not only by the Hari Bhakto or volunteer, we all felt that there is some kind of divinity, but it was felt by the outside people. There was a truck driver who came to, who used to come more often with the stones. And one time he was just talking to me and he told me that the environment here is completely different. It is not equivalent to any construction site I have been to, because he used to go to a lot of different construction sites. There is a lot of chaos. We had chaos. We know, like we had a lot of cranes, we had a lot of noise, but he felt divinity within that chaos. People were not yelling at each other. Normal construction site, there is something going on. He felt there is something different. And when I told him these people who are doing volunteer work here, they are all volunteers, he was like dumbfounded. And when he found out these are like professionals, they are doctors, they are engineers, they are even they are even students who left their career and they came here, and he was completely blown away with the fact that so many different background people can work together to make something that they don't have experience of.
You know, one important thing about how this site was different was the bhakti that was like instilled into the site. If you walked from one end to the other, as you were walking, you would hear one group doing seva on top of parikrama, and they would be listening to kirtans. Then, as you continued and you got near Akshardham, you would see, you know, the stone repair team listening to katha on a speaker. Then, as you went to the back, you'd find another group who was just starting their shift, and before they started their shift, they would do a prarthana. You know, the same prarthana that we had done to Mansai Maharaj was the prarthana that was done every single day to Mansai Maharaj about, you know, how to do this seva. So that mindset was instilled of bhakti. And it even went even further that, you know, we had the stone cutting and stone preps teams at a slightly different area called IPP. And in that area, the yuaks that were doing seva there, they felt that, you know, they wanted to be more connected to the guru that they're doing seva for. And so they talked to the santos, the parshads, the sadhaks that they were doing seva with, and they told them that Swami, can, you know, we have this 4 o'clock break where we just, you know, hang out, goof around. Maybe in this time, if we, you know, listen to katha, or if you guys read from the Jivan Charitra, then we can gain something out of it. And so that's what they would do. 4 o'clock break, they would gather in the little office they had on that site, and a Sant Parshad or somebody would read from the Jivan Charitra, and a Sant Parshad or Sadhak would give a manan on that.
This is the sadhutana gun they acquired by just doing this atishay seva. I was in some of these goshtis, and some of the yuvaks, they told me that we need to learn Gujarati because it is really hard for us to understand Pramukh Swami Maharaj's Jivan Charitra. And they went out of their way. After doing whole day seva from 7 a.m. to probably 7 p.m., 8 p.m., they would take shower, they would eat dinner, and they learned Gujarati. They found a yuvak who would willing to teach them Gujarati. And these kids, when they were at their own mandar, it was really hard for them to go to the Gujarati class. Their parents has to force them to go to Gujarati class. But here, they automatically, without anyone telling them, they wanted to connect to their guru, they wanted to connect to their Bhagwan. So they went one step above and they learned Gujarati. So this is the sadhutana gun. This is the bhakti that they achieved while doing this seva.
I remember when I was about going to Gujarati class was like pulling teeth. And so for them to be able to do that is actually a pretty big achievement. Gnannidhidas, you remember when we first got on site and our seva was in stone inventory and we had to find all the stones and get them ready? We saw rows and rows and rows of pallets, stones scattered throughout the campus.
And Haridasan Swami told us that he wanted to finish 8 Seekers and 4 Samran in one summer. And we knew like this is not possible. We cannot find even 30-40% of the stone. Our inventory was almost blank in couple of Seekers.
And in that, something in us was just like, just start and we'll get to it. And, little by little, bit by bit, somehow every shikar, every samran was finished in that summer period. And, I think a big part of that was the schedule that we had, taken on, that everybody was willing to jump in on. Waking up early, getting to site early, working longer hours, cutting breaks short. All of these things that we were doing was working towards getting to this goal. And another side of it was, the schedule, the hours caused yuaks to, change their lives. These are yuaks that had given up their summer vacation, which for a yuak, for somebody in college, it's the most valuable time. It's the time that you can sleep in until 12. It's the time that you can stay up all night. These are things that they would have been doing at home. They gave that up and they came to site. And on top of that, many of them got inspiration to come to Mangala Arti, which means they would wake up at least by 5:30, shower, maybe even some of them did puja, and come to Mangala. And so you can see that every single decision that people would make, I want to go to Mangala, I want to learn Gujarati, I want to attend a katha, I want to listen to bhajans instead of outside music. Every single decision that somebody would make in this position was lessening their swabhavs. It was pulling them away from the world and attaching them to Bhagwan.
Because some of these yuvaks who attended Mangala Arati, when we talked to their respective mandars karyakar, they told us that they were not able to even attend a Bal Sabha. Even if they are at Mandir, they would spend their time in basketball court. this one Kishore, he would stay alone in basketball court, but he would go to Kishore Mandar Sabha. And here he was attending Mangala Aarti every single day for more than a year. So this is like magical change, you can say, and it is because of the Mahant Swami Maharaj's Krupa Drishti. He developed this bhakti, he developed this sadhutano gun, that I need to go to mandir and I need to attend the Mangala.
So we all shared some really good examples of people that put away their innate natures during this site seva, right? Like you see people who are waking up early, even though that's not something they would have normally done. You see the camaraderie on site where everyone's working together towards a common goal. You see people going out of their way to learn an entirely new skill, right? To learn an entirely new language. And one might argue that you can see the same thing in a workplace, right? Like people are going to go out of their way to learn a new skill. People are going to put aside whatever discord they have with a team member because they're looking at a project deadline. So how do you explain that paradox between, on one hand, people putting away their swabhavs, mota purushni krupa, versus working together in a professional environment?
That's a really good question. I think you have to look at the inside of a person to really answer that question. For example, let's say you're working at a professional setting, right? There's some disagreement that could happen, and you get angry inside. Now, on the outside, you want to express it because, like you mentioned, it's professionalism, right? You don't want to show that. But on the inside, that anger is still building, and it's still in your mind. You're still bubbling up inside. And eventually, what could happen, right, is you go home and you maybe let that anger out on your family or your kids or your friends or whatever, right? So that anger that was there, it just got channeled somewhere else. But that anger was still there on the inside. And what you see on this side is that, these Haribhakta, they did this seva for their guru, and this Krupa Drishti happened. But they felt that not only is there, calmness on the site itself, but on the inside, they were having an experience that my swabhavs are actually going away. They're not being rechanneled, but they're actually decreasing itself.
This actually reminds me of an example of a Hari book that was on my team. So this volunteer basically told us that he used to work at a construction site before he came to Akshardham Seva. And at the construction site, he would often get angry. But now he's on Akshardham site and he's doing the same exact type of construction work. But this time, he feels that his anger is decreasing while he's doing a seva. And this feeling, he tells the other people on his team that anytime I do this seva, anytime I feel like I would have gotten angry, but instead, this anger is decreasing.
We're talking about, internal changes. There's another Haribhakt that I got the chance to do seva with. He's from the southeast. And interesting prasang was that when this call happened for seva, he wanted to come for seva, but then he couldn't because he was running a store. And his wife, Samiti, she said that, you go to do seva, I'll handle the store. And she had no experience in running the store. She had never done it before, but she took on that. And so this Haribhakt was able to go. Not only that, but one of his sons got a really good internship at Amazon, like high-paying job offer, etc. And this Haribhakt told his son that, you know what, you're never going to get this chance again. Come for seva as well. Then his second son, similar thing, internship, and he advised him to come to seva. So from one family, right, you have 3 people doing seva physically there at Akshardham. You have his wife also taking care of the store and the house at home. And you've done all of this samarpan. Then for 2 years, he absolutely killed it in terms of seva. Whenever there was a need, he would be there. He would, had samjan with his seva, everything. So then at the end, some of the santos were talking to him, and they asked him, this is months after seva finished, and they asked him that, what did you get out of seva, right? You did all this samarpan, you gave up all this, and you did seva, but what did you actually get out of it? And what he said was that, Swami, in sansar, dukh and sukh, it comes and goes, but these things aren't affecting me on the inside. On the inside, there's a level of shanti, there's a level of peace, there's a level of tranquility that I can't explain. And I'm feeling a sense of my Guru's krupa on me, even after this seva having been done. And this is something on the inside, right? You can't measure this like with some tools or instruments. This is something that someone's feeling, a change in their heart, a change in their internal peace that they're feeling after this seva is completed.
Yeah, like this Haribhakt you mentioned, there were a lot of Haribhakt in sight where their spouses helped them. Because of their spouses' samarpan, because of their Atishay Seva, they were able to come to the Robbinsville. It was not only one way. There were some wives who stayed home and there were some husbands who stayed home so their wife can come for the Seva. And this is Atishay Seva for me because they went way out of their comfort zone. There were some family where they have disabled parent. There was a family who has one of the parent was blind. They have young kids and they take care of the business. So they have like three different responsibility to take care of. So her husband can go to Robbinsville to do seva. There was a family where husband came for seva, but wife was doctor. She would take care of their kids. She would have this professional career, and she would manage everything at home so her husband can go to the seva. So to do this Atishay seva, you don't need to be in Robbinsville. You can be in Florida, you can be in California, you can be in Michigan or Texas, and still they were doing Atishay seva and they get same amount of Rajipo, they get same amount of Sukh, because you mentioned that Haribhakt, their family has more sum. So all of them get benefit from this seva.
You know, that actually reminds me, on July 8th, 2023, we had a sabha with Mansai Maharaj, the long-term volunteers, with the long-term volunteers. And in it, Haridarshan Sai was doing a question-answer session with Mansai Maharaj. And he asked Mansai, what are you going to give the people seated in this room, the people that had sacrificed 6 months or longer for the completion of Akshadam? And Mansai Maharaj almost instantly said, okay, Maharaj is going to give them Ashirwad na Dagla, heaps and heaps of Ashirwad. And then the follow-up question was, what about the wives, the husbands, the family that stayed back to make sure that, you know, these people were able to come? And Mansai Maharaj even quicker replied, "E loko mate pan Ashirwad na dagla." Even those people are getting the, you know, piles and piles of Ashirwad that Maharaj is giving. So what you were saying, Maharaj or Mansai Maharaj is, you know, proving that point, that you didn't have to be within the borders of Robbinsville Township to do Atishay Seva. You didn't have to be a part of, you know, the stone rigging team, the stone cutting team. You could be at home taking care of your kids, but because of the mindset, because of the way that you do seva, you know, you're stepping out of your comfort zone, that is Atishay Seva.
So far, we've been talking about Robbinsville, the divinity of Robbinsville, the samarpan of these Hari Bhakta, giving things up, coming to doing seva, and then feeling the benefits of that in their own lives. But what was the reason for this, right? What separated Robbinsville, Akshadam Seva, from any other, you know, task you can do, any other construction site in the world, any other place in the world? And the reason for that is exactly what Maharaj just said in his Vachanamrut, which is Mota Purush Nikrupa, the Satpurush. And the Satpurush is the thing that makes this satsang evergreen. I remember one really powerful moment for these North America Hari Bhakta, which was when Mansai Maharaj first sent an Ashirwad video of the first call to come to do Seva and Akshadam. And it was in just normal Sunday Sabha, and it was just a couple minutes, the video. It's a very simple video. Mansai Maharaj, there was no special, like, exciting music or anything that would, you know, make everyone stand up on their feet. There's nothing like that. It was Mansai Maharaj giving just a very simple, in his normal, calm manner, just giving a couple minute Ashirwad to Hari Bhakta to come do Seva. And you could feel that in those few minutes, Hari Bhaktas changed the entire trajectory of their life.
There are some Hari Bhakta who drove next morning, and they came to Robbinsville from Virginia. They left everything behind and they just drove next morning.
I remember just 1 week later, there were 100 Hari Bhakta who had showed up to Robbinsville, who had completely upended their life to do this seva. And so the question becomes that, you know, how is it that such a small thing could inspire Hari Bhakta to do such a big task, right? To completely change their lives and do this seva. And the reason for that is because every one of those 12,500 volunteers, when they see Mansai Maharaj, they see someone with a pure life. They see someone that doesn't have a single dago in his life. And they can put faith in someone like that. And they can see that all of the qualities that you read about of a Satpurush in the Vachanamrut, right? When Maharaj talks about, you know, 30 Lakshanvara Sant in the Vachanamrut, that's in the Bhagavad, that's in the Gita, that's in the Vachanamrut itself. These are all qualities that you see in Mansai Maharaj every single day. These are all, you know, things you see in every single prasang that you read about. You see a quality that's in the Vachanamrita, that's in the Shastras. And that's a very powerful thing. It gives people a place, a Satpurush that they can look towards. And that's why, you know, Yogi Bapa was able to say that the Vachanamrita is alive, because the Satpurush is in Satsang today.
So we all have these unforgettable memories of the seva that we did in Akshardham. And we see that generationally whenever there's these events, like for example, those who did seva during the Cultural Festival of India or Prong Sai Maharaj Shatabdi Mahotsav. All of these people have memories that they remember, and also these changes that happened in their life that changed the entire trajectory of their life, as you mentioned. But how do you hang on to that feeling after that event is over?
Yeah, so you asked a really good question, and the answer to that question is actually in this Vachanamrut itself. Maharaj uses the words ke agnyama mandyore. In that word mandyore, that's where you have the concept of consistency, right? In this example in Robbinsville, they did this seva and they felt, this connection to Bhagwan, their swabhavs going away. But if you do seva at a consistent level over time, then you also can experience Bhagwan Sukh consistently. And I think that's what Maharaj is doing here, is he's bringing the concept of seva out to everyone, no matter where you are, no matter who you are. That if you consistently do seva, you can experience this Bhagwan Sukh. And that's why, when it comes to doing seva in Sunday Sabha, or it comes time to doing seva, at your local mandir, you can experience the same thing that Maharaj is talking about in those examples as well. There's one example that really, touched me, which is Dr. Swami. Now, Dr. Swami is an example of a person who for the past 50 years has spent day in and day out doing seva for the Satpurush. For example, in 1982, he went to America, and some of the santos that were on that tour, they mentioned that Dr. Swami changed his entire schedule to do more padramnis. He decided that, I'm going to cut out sleeping in the afternoon. They even noted that one time Dr. Swami, they woke up at 4 a.m., these other santo, and they saw that Dr. Swami had just come in from padramnis at 4 a.m. Then they see Dr. Swami go shower immediately. They see him come out from the shower, do puja, and then he immediately gets up and goes out the door with another sant to do more padramnis. And this happened twice on that tour. So this is an example of Dr. Swami who's consistently day in and day out, over months, over years, doing padramni, doing vichra, and doing seva. And even when Dr. Swami came here last month, the santo here in Sarangpur, they did an analysis of Dr. Swami's vichra in the 90s and in the early 2000s. And they found data that showed that Dr. Swami would do 4, 5, 6 sabhas a day for weeks on end. I mean, for us, to do like one Bhav Sabha or to do one Yuvak Sabha, it takes a lot of mental energy. You have to prepare for it. It's a lot of time, energy that goes into it. Dr. Swami is doing 4, 5, 6 sabhas a day for weeks on end. This is like a perfect example of that, Sevama Mandyore, Agnama Mandyore that Maharaj is talking about. And today when you look at Dr. Swami, you feel that sukh and that shanti that Maharaj is talking about. Even when he was here in Sarangpur, santos would ask him, okay, Dr. Swami, you're eating and in front of you there's 22 items. Do you remember anything that you ate? And Dr. Swami would say no.
He mentioned a couple of times that મને ખાવાનો સંકલ્પ થતો નથી. I don't have any thought about any food. Like, this is crazy. And when we asked him, like, do you feel that God is next to you? Do you feel the presence of God? He said, like, continuously. I feel continuous presence of God.
And there's one prasang that his Sevak Sant had told us, which is that Dr. Sai was in one mandir. In the morning, he goes to shower. And he showers and he comes out. But the Sevak Sant goes to check. And he notices that the water was in the bucket because Dr. Sai, he saves as much water as he can. And he feels the water and it's ice cold. It's really cold. And so the Sevak Sant asked Dr. Swami that, do you know, like, were you showering with warm water, cold water? Like, what was it? And Dr. Swami didn't even remember that the water was cold. And what does this mean? This means that Dr. Swami is experiencing Bhagwan Sukh to such a level that he's not affected by any situation, any circumstance around him. And that's something that, is really powerful. And that's what exactly Maharaj is talking about here. Agnama Mandore.
Similar to that is the life of Param Pujya Tyagulabhai. He has reached that same spiritual level through consistent seva. He didn't do any grand gestures or any big seva, but his seva was taking care of the kitchens. If you look at his life, he comes from a really well-off family in Africa. And when he came to become a sadhu, when Yogi Baba gave him diksha, after that he gave him agna to take care of the kitchen. Now, Tyagulabhai is one of the few santos that was fluent in English and was really bright in his studies. But instead of giving him the opportunity to learn, Yogi Baba gave him this agna of taking care of the kitchen, which he had no experience in. He didn't even know how to light a primus, which was the stove, the type of stove that they used back in those days. But he learned, and he learned all the little things. And through it, he kept working at it. He mandyore, right? The word that Maharaj uses is mandyore. And he kept doing that. And, even if he would go for Yogi Baba's lab, Yogi Baba would send him back into the kitchen. Even if if the young santos in Mumbai at the time ate the food for the next day, he was taught to tolerate that. And so even we talked about the ups and downs, remaining steady. He learned how to remain steady. And through this Atishay Seva, he was able to reach a level that, that we're all trying to work towards. So that, it just really shows how just a small Seva, but with consistency, can reach so many, or can yield so many benefits.
Yes, and Tyagvallabh Swami here has himself mentioned this multiple times. Once he said that Pramukh Swami Maharaje મને ગજા ઉપરાંત આપ્યું છે. He has given me beyond my limits. Tyagvallabh Swami has said once that મને હવે કોઈ સ્વાદ રહ્યો નથી. I don't feel any difference between the food that I eat. So this is the sukh that he is experiencing, and we feel that sukh when Tyagvallabh Swami come next to you, and when he fold his hand, and when he look at you, we feel that, oh, this person is enjoying some different kind of sukh, some different kind of bliss. He is seeing Bhagwan in us. The way he is folding the hand to every single sant, every single Hari Bhakt, you feel that he is at some different level. And this is not only Sadguru Santo. Our Hari Bhakto who did this consistent seva, they have reached this level. In 2019, you went to White Sand Resort, right, Swami?
Yeah, so we had the chance to go with Swami Shri to White Sands Resort. At that time, we didn't know whose it was, but as we were there, people were saying, "Oh, this is Subhash Bhai, this is Subhash Bhai," but Subhash Bhai was nowhere to be found, which was jarring because this was his resort. Mahan Sai Maharaj was staying there, and the love that the Santo and the Hari Bhakta were getting was like next to, was on another level. There was, Bappa would eat lunch out on the sand, on the beach, and everybody was, able to come and get that darshan. But Subhash Bhai wasn't there. Subhash Bhai was actually in Kampala, a different country, getting that mandir ready for Swami Shri's visit after Dar es Salaam. And so it's crazy that, whenever Bappa comes to our center or whatever, and we want to be there, it's natural, right? You want to be there for that lab. But he had that, mindset of that Atishay Seva.
And it's not limited to only this one person. In 2017, and also 2019, Bapa stayed in his home when Bapa visited Dar es Salaam. But in 2017, when he went to South Africa to invite Mahant Swami Maharaj, after coming back to Dar es Salaam, he never went back into his home. He said, like, Mahant Swami Maharaj is going to stay at this home, so I'll stay in Sangvi house, which is a house next to his current house where Mahant Swami was supposed to stay. And this house was actually made for his cook. So Subhash Bhai, being such a big businessman, he was staying in Sangvi house during this Mahant Swami Maharaj's stay, and he wouldn't even come for Mahant Swami Maharaj's lab. So from this person, we can see that the Subhash Bhai has achieved the highest spiritual level. He was able to feel Bhagwan and Sant in his heart. This is the same thing Dr. Swami has mentioned when he was in Sarangpur, that he feel Bhagwan constantly next to him. So there is a Gruhast who reached this highest spiritual state, and there is a Sadguru Sant who reached this state by doing Atishay Seva, which is written in this Vachanamrut. When you do this Atishay Seva, there will be Krupa Drashti of Satpurush, and because of this Krupa Drashti, you will get rid of your swabhav and you will be able to enjoy the sukh of satsang.
So I think, it comes on to us now. Like, what do we have to do with this knowledge, right? Maharaj talks about Atishay Seva, he talks about Seva Ma Mandyore, but it comes on us, right? We have to decide if, we're going to be content just by staying on the sidelines and not moving forward, or do we want to, get into the game? Because, getting into the game is what gets us this progress that we talked about, right? All these people, they, did that Atishay Seva. They took that step, they got involved. And any way we can get involved, we should try to get involved, because this is how we're able to accomplish this Atishay Seva. This is how we're able to, be a part of Satsang. And, the Satpurush has said that you don't have to do my personal Seva, right? Most of the examples we talked about today weren't people doing personal Seva of the Satpurush, of Man Sai, of Pramukh Sai, of Yogi Baba. But the entire Satsang community, the Satpurush has said, this is my sharir, this is my body. So, whether you're in, Australia working doing seva in the kitchen, or you're in India setting up chairs, or you're working on a relief work with the sanstha in, London, wherever it is, this is all at the end of the day Satpurusha's seva. And so, it's important that, we get involved. There's a drashant that, I had heard that if there's a player and he's watching game film, that's not going to help him get over his weaknesses. He might be able to see that I have this weakness. Let's say, for example, in basketball, there's a player that has difficulty with his 3-point shot, and he sees that in game film I'm not able to make that 3-point shot. But that's not going to make him become a better 3-point shooter. He has to lace up his shoes. He has to get onto the court. He has to work on it. He has to actively be involved. He has to get involved with his team, know when he's going to be able to get open to get that 3-point shot in. And that work is what gets him to get rid of his weaknesses. Same for us. That seva that we do is what's going to get rid of our swabhavs. And so we can just sit back and, take the easy route, the lazy river route, but that's not going to be what gets us to Bhagwan Nusuk.
So far in this Vajramrut, let's look at the journey that Maharaj has taken us through. Firstly, Muktanand Swami brought up a really good point that swabhavs are the core disease which causes us to feel dukh in our lives, right? It's not just a symptom, but focusing on the disease is what's important. And then Maharaj gave a very high-level answer. He said that if you have Vairagya, then you can overcome this disease. But then Maharaj also brings this down to the common man. He brings it down to the common Haribhakt. That if you do something as simple as seva, and seva doesn't need to be some hi-fi thing, but it can be any small thing that you do, but for the Satpurush and with a pure intention. And if you can do that, then you can experience the same satsang nusuk, the same sthiti that these Haribhakto and Santo have experienced throughout the start of satsang. And so this is a great Vajramrut because it's almost like a permanent life hack, right? It's breaking through the sort of the confusion of life, giving us the exact problem, and then giving us a very simple solution to solve that problem. And I think it's a Vajramrut that we can all sort of implement upon reading it.
So to end, I think we got new perspectives on what Maharaj said. We learned the right way of doing seva, following Agna, and we got this really cool opportunity to do smruti of our experiences in Robbinsville. So I just want to thank you guys for taking time out of your own abhyas, your own seva, to be a part of this. And to end, let's pray to Maharaj and Swami that what Maharaj has said in this Vachanamrut, we be able to imbibe in our own lives. Thank you, and Jai Swaminarayan.